My brothers and sisters in Christ, in our American social consciousness, there's an old joke, albeit a very dark, kind of grim one, that floats around in reference to the mid-19th century assassination of President Abraham Lincoln at the Ford Theater during the play. And the joke always says, well, other than that, how was the play, Miss Lincoln? It's a joke that always makes reference to when we get overly honed in on a detail while forgetting the overall goriness or horror of a situation, that we lose all context. It's an inappropriate joke, but one that holds insight to what often happens to us in the moral life as we hone in on a particular thing to the exclusion of the greater picture. And this principle is very much at play in our readings today. Certainly, the first reading from the book of Proverbs speaks these words of wisdom, and even the psalm of the need of the righteousness of God's law, of following his ways, that we ultimately are judged on knowing God's ways and following God's ways. So often as a priest, and not even as a priest, in our world, we see this divorcing of the concept of goodness from what God ultimately, who is the ultimate good, has revealed as goodness. And we see this in many different ways, so some of which are very sad. For example, we'll see an incident where, for example, someone who commits a horrible crime like a mass shooting, and yet someone will go on and say, well, he was such a good person. Or sometimes even in the sacrament of penance, people that want to confess one sin, but try to justify even while confessing of, I'm really a good person. Here's all the reasons why I'm good. And it speaks to this battle that we have. First of all, we always want to think well of ourselves and our loved ones. But also, we can hone in on our criteria of goodness, of closeness. For example, as I said, the friend or the loved one of the criminal, well, because they're close to me, I know their goodness. I know a goodness of a different kind. They're good. Even though they do horrible things, they're good. Or the person who goes in, who sees themselves as ultimately good while going before God to confess a mortal sin or something else. Ultimately, I'm good. We see this at funerals, sometimes of the tragedy of someone's life who ends with much pain in their family and loved ones. And it's like, but they were basically a good person. Now, I don't say all these things to cast judgment on any of these cases or individuals, but it speaks to our relative ways of defining what makes someone good, what makes us good or not. When in fact, again, God, who is the source of all goodness, defines for us what is good. And he defines not only by his law, his commandments, but by association. He is the one who is all good. And so we are good in as far as we reflect him, by our closeness with him, our association with him. This, in reality, is the only determinant of goodness. One cannot be good if separated from the good. If one is separated from God, goodness is not possible. Maybe goodness by some worldly definition of decency or a lack of evil acts, but true goodness flows from closeness to God, to not only follow his ways, but to know him and to reflect his goodness. And so we see this in today's gospel. When Jesus is told his mother, his brothers, his sisters are outside, and he rebuts not by denying their closeness to him, but pointing to that which really matters. Those who hear my Father's law, who follow it, those are my mother, my brother, my sisters. And of course, when speaking of his own mother, no one exemplifies this new definition more than the Blessed Virgin Mary as the hearer of the law, the one who meditates upon it and reflects it. But he speaks to what truly makes someone his disciple or of the household, of the family of God. And that is not just by some proximate identity or even by a bloodline or family relationship, but those who know God, who know the Lord, listen to him, follow him, and reflect his goodness. My brothers and sisters, may we never try to define our good or the good of others by any definition of our own or the world's, but only upon God's standard. God, whom is goodness, and from whom all goodness flows. May God bless you all.